This is a test battery that we have used over the last 5 years with the White Sox. The purpose of the test battery is to identify the potential to play baseball. It's not necessarily going to identify baseball skill, but the individual components that we're going to look at in the test are components that happen in the game. So therefore we can look to identify our players' strengths and weaknesses and therefore be able to train that in the conditioning program. There are 5 specific objectives in this athletic profile that we have developed and we have worked on over the past 5 years. The first objective is to identify baseball-relevant athletic performance factors. We want to look at factors such as speed, explosive ability, work capacity, willpower, all ingredients that help go into making a successful baseball player. Our second objective is to profile the specific athletic qualities of the various positions. We want to look at, for example, what qualities it takes to play first base versus third base versus middle infield versus catching versus pitching. So we're going to look at what qualities that these various positions have. Our third objective is to establish a baseline criteria for return to play after injury. All our players are tested at the beginning of spring training. If a player should be injured, for example, with a knee injury, a low back injury, then we expect that player to be able to return to a certain percentage of his best performance on the test before he's allowed to return to play. So it gives us another criteria aside from specific baseball ability to look at. Their next objective is to measure the effects of the conditioning. We spend a lot of time and effort in conditioning the players, but we need to find specific means of verifying whether or not the conditioning program is having an impact. Sometimes it's hard to measure specifically in regard to baseball skill, so this gives us an objective measure of a player's improvement over the years. Our last objective is to identify conditioning strengths and weaknesses. So what we do is profile each player, and we look at each of the tests and identify strengths and weaknesses and identify areas of need so that we can become even more specific with the conditioning program. This is coupled with anecdotal evidence gathered by talking with the managers and the coaches to help make that player better. Our testing program begins with an orientation session. This must be a very thorough orientation to make the players aware of the test, how they are to move from one test to the other, because when we test 150 players at one time, organization is very important. The other thing that we do during the orientation is reward the players for previous good test performances. I feel that that's really an important aspect, that they be rewarded and recognized if they break a record or they improve their best. Immediately following the orientation, we do a warm-up. The warm-up that we do before testing is the same warm-up that we use before practice or before games. It starts out with the players jogging a lap, then doing dynamic leg swings to stretch out their groin. This is followed by a stretching routine, which is an active stretching routine to stretch all the major areas of the body that are stressed in baseball. This is then followed by what we call coordination, which involves things like cariokas and side steps, which is active. This is followed by striding. At this point, the players are ready to go into practice. The first test that we do is a sit and reach test, and basically this is a compromise test to look at static flexibility, which probably has the least to do with actual performance, but if we can make some correlations with this to the other tests, then it is a useful test. The second test is the vertical jump, which is a basic test of power. Correlates very highly with the player's ability to sprint. We also feel that it can correlate with the ability of a pitcher to throw hard. The third test is a standing long jump, which is another explosive power test, probably more important for the player than for the pitcher, but it is a good test of lower body explosive power. Agility is the next test. We use a 5-10-5 test without a reaction. Here we're looking at the player's ability to change direction rapidly. It's a good test to identify eccentric strength, potential for injury, also potential for performance. The cone jump is a repetitive power test, demands a lot of coordination. We execute the test for 30 seconds, back and forth over 12-inch traffic cones. The next test is the 10-yard burst test. Here, only the players do this test, and this is to identify starting ability and basically the first part of acceleration. The next test that we use is a med ball throw, which is a test of total body power. They will throw the ball over their back, and it's a pretty commonly used test in track and field, and we're just introduced this test this year to take the place of the sit-up. The last test is a 300-yard shuttle. The pitchers do 2 300-yard shuttles with 5 minutes recovery. We take the average of the 2 times.